So the land of the free and the home of the brave. Hey there! Today we're going to talk about an ink that came in this box. You know which ink this is. I mean, you know which brand it is. That's what I should say. And if you look at my finger, you may know which ink it is, although that's quite difficult. This is an ink that was sent to me by Brian Goulet. He said he was proud of this ink because he helped develop it, and I've got to tell you, I like the ink too. This is Noodler's Liberty's Elysium, and as always with Noodler's ink, you get this really nice, well, I'm not sure whether that's really nice, but you get this this really nicely designed label. Work went into that. I appreciate that. The bottle was extremely full. If you've ever used Noodler's ink, you kind of know that. I'm unscrewing it right now. It really was. There was a bottle there was ink all the way up to the neck of the bottle. There was, I think, maybe 1 or 2 millimeters of just air just below the actual rim of the bottle. So be careful when you get this stuff and you open it up. Okay, what have we got here? What we've got here is a very intense, vibrant blue. A blue that I like. I had seen it. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to get this, but Brian was kind enough to send me a bottle. Fascinating ink. That's the best way I can describe it. When I saw the color for the first time, I thought, hello, what have we got here then? Because it's a very, I don't think I've seen an ink with this particular color. It's definitely not turquoise. It's definitely blue. It's a darker blue, but it's not blue black, and yet it's very intense, pretty well shaded. Just a lot of fun. So what we're going to do today is have a good look at this ink. I think it's going to be fun. So let's get to it. Alright, so here we go with what is known and loved as Noodler's Liberties. Sorry, whatever. Liberty's Elysium. My handwriting is weird today. Okay, let us start with some fine writing. The quick brown fox lived in liberty. Then we have medium. So far the ink is behaving. I can't write the word liberty. Liberty. It's the B.E that makes it a little complicated. So far the ink is behaving well. No real skips or anything. Broad fox lived in liberty. Notice the use of the past tense there. Italic. You can do it. There we go. And then finally I think we should do some flexi writing. We all need some flex appeal once in a while, after all. Flex.
do get some railroading, as you can see. It is Rhodia paper, flexed nib. Maybe a bit too smooth. I'm just squeezing a drop of ink into the feed there. And as you can see, that helped. A lot. Cool. Alright. Then I think we should do a couple of passes. Let's start with one pass. It's always good to start with the first thing. Okay, and I think this kind of demonstrates the thing I mentioned earlier. This is a fairly unique blue. I have used quite some inks, quite a number of them were blues, and I don't recall having seen this color before. It's a very nice, vibrant, intense color. When it comes to shading, well, there definitely is some. Let me take a pointing object. You see there's a lighter blue there and a darker blue right here. So I think that's quite nice. Of course you'll see that mainly in the broader nib, so broad and italic. There is some nice shading. It's not excessive, but it's definitely there. And I know a lot of blue inks that don't shade at all, so I think this is actually pretty cool. Okay, I think what we need is some writing with a very broad nib to see how we're doing with a really wide nib. This shall be used for waterproofness testing. L for liberty, more or less. Alright, and then I want some regular writing. So that we can use that with some water. And let us just check this here. Yep, that's dry. Then we can add a second pass. Seem to dry fairly quickly. Let's put that to the test. Yep, that's dry too. Nice. Alright. Then I'll just have to come back for a third pass later there. But for now, I think this is dry. Yep. So we can have a look at some wiping with that very sad moment, the bastard brush. Alright, that doesn't look too badly. We'll come back to that in a second. How are we doing here? Yeah, it's a little... I'm just going to use some blotting paper to make sure it's really dry. It was almost dry, there were just a few bits that had some ink still dry. Sorry, still wet. Yeah, that's good. Okay, well then I think we should have a look at the eyedropper of death. Okay, we shall be coming back to that later too. Then I think there is that great moment you've all been waiting for, the Tardif test. And while we're at it, I think we may also do the Brown benchmark. There we go. Stuff I do for you people. Alright. While this is drying, I think we should get a tissue and get rid of that excess water. Not the Brown benchmark though, that's a whole different matter. Okay. And then I think that first of all I will put the lid on that bottle of ink. It's a lot of ink. If I knock that over, there's going to be brown fallout. So here we go. Third pass. Let's have a look at this watery stuff we've done, because it looks to me like the ink did pretty well. You can still read it. There is some smear, but even this word I can still read relatively well. And this fat writing lost some of its color, but it's still there, so that's not bad at all either. So in fact I'm quite impressed. As to shading, we've got a non-saturated pen and a highly saturated pen. Goes from that nice vibrant blue to a very dark intense blue. This is like a night sky, but it's not a blue-black. It's really an intense dark blue. I really like this color. I think it's a really nice ink in that regard. Okay, how about we start to work on a scorecard? Let's start with cleaning. Well, I've not really had any issues with cleaning it, so I'm going to give it a 1, which means very easy to clean. Then we have bleed through. That is something we'll have to assess after I've used some copier paper. We have color. Well, let's just say it's blue. We have shading. Shading, it's not excessive, but it's definitely there, so I'm going to give that 2 out of 3, 1 being the excessive shading and 3 being no shading at all. Then I'm going to give this a flow. Well, flow seems pretty good. Even with the flex nib, if you just squeeze a bit of that ink into the feed, you prime the feed a bit, then it seems to work pretty well. I'm willing to give that a 1, which is top marks for flow. Then we have feathering. That's another thing we'll have to assess later on. I have been using this ink. It didn't seem particularly prone to feather, but on some cheaper papers it does. So I'm interested to see what it'll do on the copier paper. Then we have drying time. Well, that seems to be pretty quick, even on this Rhodia paper, so I'm going to give that full marks too. And then finally we have waterproofness. I'm willing to give that full marks too. It's, I mean, this stays pretty legible, more so than many other inks. So far the ink is doing pretty well. I think we should move to some copier paper and see how well it keeps up on cheaper paper. Come back to that in a second. Okay, here we go. Let's start with some fine writing. Medium, broad, italic. Annoying. Okay. And maybe some fat writing, but before... No, let's just do some fat writing. We've already had the L for Liberty, so maybe we should now just do an E for Elysium. Just look at that wonderful, intense blue color. I'm really impressed with this. I really love it. E, and maybe some fooling around there. There we go. You know, let's fool around some more. It's part of the fun. Okay. No, okay, I'm done. Right, there we go. And then some flexi writing. To be completely honest, I'm going to prime the feed again. That seemed to work well. And see what it does. Someone recently told me that I should practice writing the word minimum. And you can have a lot of fun writing the word minimum. Now I did that slowly and deliberately. But what you should try is to write that quickly in one motion. And then ask people, you just do this. See, I'm already missing one loop there. And then you ask them, what does it say? And they say, it says nothing, it's just a bunch of, you know, wiggly shapes. But it says minimum. So it's a lot of fun. If you can make that look good, you have good handwriting. And as you can see, mine suffers. Okay, minimum. So, let's take a look. Because I want to see any feathering. But I don't. I don't see any feathering in the broad nib. I don't see any feathering in the italic nib. We have a look at the really fat nib. I'm taking a hard look at this. I don't see any feathering. This is not feathering. That's just a little bit of that line sticking out. I don't see any feathering. How about the flex writing? I don't see any feathering there. Maybe a little bit there. Let's try to squeeze the maximum, minimum, maximum. Joke. I make a joke. Let me see if I can just make this some serious. Railroading. No. Well, anyway, this worked out. That's a lot of ink. I don't see any feathering. It's nice and wet, but I don't see any feathering. So I'm pretty impressed, I have to say. So, let's finish up our scorecard. 1, 2, boom! That was fast, wasn't it? You hardly saw it. Alright. Bleed through. Yep, it bleeds through. But this is a 6mm nib, this is a flex nib. There's a little bit of bleed through with the broad nib. Maybe some shade through, but this I would call that actual bleed through. With regular nibs, fine nib, medium nib, it's not pronounced, and with the italic nib, interestingly enough, it's not really there either. So it's really an aberration with the broad nib, but it is in spots we would expect it, a dot, etc. Flex nib, this nib doesn't really count, right? This is excessive writing on fairly cheap paper. I'm willing to bet that if we have a look at Rhodia paper, there is no bleed through at all. Well, okay, there is, but that's 3 passes. 3 passes with a 6mm nib, that doesn't count. Regular writing, even the Tardif test, the Brown benchmark bleeds through, but I mean, that's not serious either. Regular writing, I don't really see any bleed through, apart from this, but I think those are actually spots. Yeah, they're not on that side of the paper, so those are actually spots, I don't know, probably from this or something. So I'd say that looks pretty good. So, when it comes to bleed through, there are inks that don't even bleed through with the 6mm nib. So I'm going to give this 2 out of 3, 1 being the best. Doesn't really matter if you're in the middle of the score, of course, but still. I I'm giving it a 2 because of the really fat writing, but in general, I think in general use, because I also give it a 2 because I see some bleed through with the broad. But I think for regular normal writing you should be pretty good, and it may even be a 1. If you always use Rodiats, it's going to be a 1. So, gotta make choices. Okay, when it comes to feathering, I'm going to give it a 1, full marks, because I don't see any feathering. So, what we've got is an ink can score 7 points. The lowest score is best here, so 7 points would be a superb ink. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have 7 of course. So you can score 21 points, which would be a terrible ink. It would be hard to clean, bleed through terribly, have no shading, terrible flow, etc. Right here we've got 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Looks good to me. So what we've got here is inkage 9. Alright, now finally I want to do a bit of a comparison with another ink. I can tell you that was really difficult because I couldn't find an ink that has this odd vibrant blue color. So I found something. I'm not too happy with it because it's not a good comparison, but it's what I have, so you'll just have to bear with it. So what we have here is Noodler's Liberties Elysium, yes. Interesting vibrant blue, some flexy stuff, and then what we've got is another ink. This is an ink the first ink I thought of when I tried out this Liberties Elysium was Parker Penman Sapphire. I've done an Inkcyclopedia entry on that ink too, but if you have seen that you may recall, or if you've not seen that, you may recall that that ink is discontinued. Now it's not the same ink, that's a bit darker, but it sort of has the same intense feeling to it. It's hard to explain. Now because that ink is discontinued, I thought it would be a little odd to use that as a comparison, because if you like it, you almost can't get it. So what I used instead is something I got a sample of, and that is Private Reserve American Blue. Now the reason I use American Blue is that that was actually meant to be a type of replacement for the Penman Sapphire, you see. So it's kind of like the same, except it's different because it's like more modern and you can actually buy it. So I thought that would be a good comparison. American Blue. American Blue would look something like this. And when you flex it, you get something like this. And it should be quite apparent from all of this that it's a bit darker. It's darker than the other stuff, darker than Liberties Elysium. But at least it's, a bit, I think you can compare the two, sort of. And that was the end of my American act. So, here we have it. A much requested ink for the Inkcyclopedia. Our thanks go to Brian Goulet for supplying that ink to us. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.